everybody, welcome back to my channel. So today I am going to show you how I achieved this painting of Frida Kahlo. If you are interested, then keep on watching. Okay, so first off, I don't use a grid or anything like that. I literally just look at the picture and kind of measure it with the pencil, and that helps me get the distance from each feature as accurate as I can make it from just eyeballing it. Right now, I am sketching out where the features are gonna go, the eyebrows, how far from the eyebrows to where the eyes are gonna start, and then also where the nose will end, the bottom of the nose, and where the top of the lip will be, and the bottom of the lip. So right now, I've put everything in there and I started drawing on the eyebrows, sketching out the eyebrows and how long they will be and the correct angle and arch of the eyebrow. And here I'm measuring the distance of how long the eye will be. When I'm doing this, I'm just measuring, I'm looking at the picture and seeing where does the end of the eye stop at in regards to the eyebrow. And that's when I made that line. So now I'm just creating the shape of the eye. A good tip when you're drawing eyes, just normally drawing an eye, they're kind of an almond shape. And then you can kind of, go in and personalize it depending on the person that you're drawing. So you can see now I'm just drawing the eyeball, making sure it's the right size and not too big and not too small in regards to the whole eye that I made for the shape. So here I've started to draw on the nose, and when I'm doing the nose, I'm just focusing on the folds and the nostrils, making sure I get that angled correctly, because that is a big part in making sure the nose looks the same as the drawing. You have to make sure the nostrils are angled and shaped correctly. And also the sides of the nostril, like the little cup shape. The sides, I guess is the best way to say that. So here I'm just focusing on the bridge of the nose and just making sure I get it correctly. And then I'm also filling in shapes that coincide with the shading and the shadows in the face. This also helps when you're drawing portraits. For me, when I draw portraits, I mainly focus on the shapes of the shadows. And here I'm just filling in the light in the eyes, making sure I'm putting it in the correct part of her eye so that when I start to paint and I put those in, the little white light parts in the eye, it'll really look realistic and it'll look like her eyes. So here I've moved on to the lips, and I do apologize that at this angle you can't really see too much of me sketching the lips. I am going to move like the angle of my easel, but right now I'm just focusing on making sure I get the lips correct. I'm also doing the shadow as well in the lips, where it's darker and where it's lighter. I'm focusing on that as well. So whenever I change the angle of the easel, you will get to see what I've done in the lips. There I go. So right now I'm angling it so you can kind of see I have a lot going on in the lip area, and that's just a bunch of the shadows and making sure I get the right folds in her lips correctly. And then the bottom lip, making sure it kind of dips in a little bit at the bottom. So I want to make sure I get that not too dipped, but not rounded either. So right now you see I'm doing that little shape, and that is a shadow on her face. So I'm just going in and making sure I'm getting all the shadows, and she has a lot of shadows by her nose and her mouth area. So I'm just making sure to get those in there so that whenever I start painting, it will help guide me to make sure I paint this part a different color than the rest of her face, so that you can get a sense of depth and perception. So right now that's all I'm doing is filling in shapes in her face and the shadows. An easy thing when you're doing shadows is just to make them into an actual shape. Of course the shadows, when you see them, unless they're really defined shadows, they kind of just gradually fade into the skin. But for the purpose of drawing her and making sure I know where everything is going, I'm making them into complete shapes. When I paint them, I will paint them open and where they blend into the skin. Right here, this is also the shadow, but right now I'm trying to define the shape of her face. I'm really trying to focus on getting her cheekbones correct, and also in relation to her hair, where her hair is starting and where her ear is starting. You see, I turned the pencil on the side. I'm measuring where her ear starts to the eye level. So like the top of her ear, measuring to where it is on the eyes. And that way I make sure that I'm not making the ear too high on her face, making sure it's level with where it is on her eyes. Now I do a lot of erasing. I'm not shy to erase. When I was in school doing figure drawing, we had an exercise where we couldn't erase at all, which helped, make my sketches more deliberate. But I am not afraid to erase. If I think that marking wasn't good, I will erase it in a quick second, just to make sure that my markings are to my liking. So here, the camera got a little dark because I'm using natural lighting and the sun, is moving from my window. But right here, I'm trying to perfect the shape of her face. Notice I'm doing a second line because the first line, it was too round. And like I said, I am not scared to fix a marking. So I erased that and tried again. And I do this a couple times, just making sure her face isn't too wide. Although it is rounded, it's slim. It was very challenging trying to make the shape of her face correct, because like I said, her chin, it's not a pointy chin, it's a rounded chin, but her face is slim, so I had to play around with that. You may have seen me do the pencil thing again as far as the bottom of the ear in relation to the other side of her face and the other ear, making sure that those are on the same level. And here I'm just doing the fold from where her ear will begin to form into the side of her face. Although her ears are bigger, I didn't want to make them super huge. So I'm done with the ears, and now I'm focusing on the hairline. Right now, this is just me getting the shape of her face. I will go in and establish another line, which will be her hairline. So this is just me closing off the shape of her face and getting her forehead to my liking. So here on this line, I'm doing her hairline. So you see that little dip. Her hair is a little bit thinner right there, so I wanted to make sure that when I start painting, I don't make thick paint right there. So I'm just going in, filling in her hair, and also the scarf or ribbon she has in her hair. I'm sectioning that part off as well. And then I'm also going in and putting more markings for her hairline. And then on the other side, doing her hair and also the scarf and the ribbon. And now I'm just finishing up getting her neck correctly, making sure it's slim enough. So yeah, that is the drawing, and then I'm gonna start painting. So here I've already started to paint her face. The technique that I'm doing when I start to paint, I like to start off with some color on the canvas, because I notice if I go straight into the color that I'm looking for on the canvas, you're gonna see the white peeking through. So here I just created a flesh tone base. Now I am using acrylic, so the colors that I pile on top will not mix with the color that I put down. I just prefer having something down already so that when I put the color that I'm trying to achieve on top of it, you can't see any white from the canvas board peeking through. So here, it's kind of on the darker side because she does have the shadows and stuff in her face. So I tried to get it that color at the beginning before I started painting the actual color that I'm going to do for her face and her ears and neck. So here, like I said, I'm just filling in everything, giving it a fresh coat, a little first coat over everything, so that when I start to put the color that I want, it's not a whole lot of the white seeping through. So here I'm working on doing the first coat of the hair, getting that down. I'm also going to do the scarf and the ribbon. And then I just have like a, so this isn't an actual black. I did like a brown black. From the color that I did her face, I just added black to it in order to get a hair color, like a darker hair color, but not super pitch black. And I used this for her eyes and her eyebrows, the first coat. And so here, the same color that I used for the scarf, I also use that for the shadow in her lips. Later on, I'm going to do a second coat, as I mentioned, and I'm also going to use that for the remainder part of her lips. So here I just filled in her eyebrows. And right now, you can see those little dashes on her forehead. That's me trying to get the correct color for her skin tone overall. So now I found the color that I wanted, and then I just go in and start painting the rest of her face. And if you can see how much better it looks going on top of that first coat versus if I would have just started painting that color on top of the white, it would have been very blotchy and it wouldn't have looked as good. So I'm just filling in her face and the highlights in her face also with this color. So I'm kind of skipping around. You can see I'm leaving some spaces out, and those are for the darker shadows in her face. A little cameo. So like I said, I'm right now with that color, I'm filling in the highlights of her face because her forehead is a little bit brighter than the rest of her face, just a tad bit. And so I was able to kind of distinguish with this color using it for the highlight on the rest of her face. So I'm still going in, doing the highlights. And with the first coat, I want to mention, the first coat isn't super dark, so I was still able to see the drawing and know where to put the highlights and the shadows. So I made sure not to make the first layer of paint not super thick. I added a lot of water to it so that I can be able to see through that first coat. So I'm just still doing the same thing, and I just kind of really work this through, take my time on this part, because I want to make sure that I'm getting all of the highlights out of the way before I start doing the shadows and the contrast in her face. So off camera, I did her cheekbones and I tried to do her blush. I went so overboard and I just kind of skipped it. I am going to fix it because it is ridiculous. But for now, I just moved on and I did her eyebrows. I finished her eyebrows and did the unibrow that she's famous for. I filled that in, and right now I'm just adding hair strands to her hairline and making that look more realistic. And also adding the finishing touches to the scarf as well. And then you'll also see here where I do the lip as well. It's the same color from the scarf. Here's me filling in the scarf, and then you'll see me do the lips as well. But yes, I decided to do the eyebrows off camera because at this angle it was really tough to try to do each strand by strand, and so I needed to make sure that the canvas was close to me so that I have more control over my hand and the strokes with the paintbrush. And so I didn't want to record that part because you wouldn't been able to see anything anyway. So here you can see I'm painting the lips, and it's the same color that I use for the scarf. And then also I fixed her cheeks off camera as well because I had to go over it a couple different times, and it was really frustrating trying to get it to not be so in your face. So here's the finished look. There's the eyebrows up close, and her cheeks fit very well, and I did her earrings and everything. There's a part on the side that have color I was playing around when I was filling in her cheeks. And then of course I can't forget, gotta put my signature. Thank you guys so much for watching. See you in my next video.